Gunpowder has a smell that doesn't leave you. Not really. You can scrub your hands until the skin cracks, sleep in clean sheets, drink enough cheap wine to forget most things. But the smell stays in the back of your sinuses, patient and permanent, like a tenant who knows you'll never actually make them leave. Lena Kowalski knew this. She also knew that the elementary school gymnasium smelled like floor wax, sweaty sneakers, and the particular desperation of a Tuesday afternoon bake sale. She stood behind the folding table in her gray Riverside Elementary staff polo, arranging paper plates of snickerdoodles with the same flat precision she had once used to arrange surgical instruments on a field kit. A third grader grabbed 3 cookies with one fist and sprinted away before she could say anything. She let him go. It wasn't worth it. None of it was really worth the energy people spent on it. The scrambling, the posturing, the noise. Lena had learned that somewhere between her second deployment and her third, she couldn't remember exactly when, the timeline of those years had compressed into a series of smells and sounds rather than dates. Diesel and blood and the particular high whine of a helicopter turbine on a dark hillside. She'd stopped trying to sequence them. Mrs. Kowalski, the juice boxes are running low. This was from Tricia, the PTA president, a woman who treated a shortage of Capri Sun with the same urgency that Lena had once treated arterial hemorrhage. Tricia wore a fleece vest with the school's eagle mascot embroidered on the chest and had the relentless energy of a golden retriever in a thunderstorm. "There's another case in the storage closet behind the stage," Lena said, her voice level. "Left side, bottom shelf." Tricia beamed and bustled away. Lena watched her go, then turned back to the cookies. She had been the school's administrative coordinator for 4 years. Before that, she'd done 6 months of nothing, sitting in her sister's spare bedroom in Tucson, staring at the ceiling fan until the blades blurred, drinking coffee she didn't taste, waking at 3 a.m., with her hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Her sister had eventually pushed a job listing across the breakfast table without comment. Elementary school, front office, benefits. Lena had taken it the way she took most things now. Without enthusiasm, without objection, momentum was easier than decision. She was 34. She looked older, people said, though not unkindly. Her dark hair was shot through with premature gray she made no effort to hide, kept in a short, practical cut that required nothing of her. She owned 4 identical navy blue staff polos. She never attended the after-school happy hours at the Mexican place on Route 9. She learned every child's name by the second week of school each year, not because it was part of her job description, but because knowing who was in a room was a habit she couldn't unlearn. She had no enemies at Riverside Elementary. She also had no real friends. She existed in that school the way a load-bearing wall exists in a building, essential, undecorated, completely unremarked upon until something needed holding up. That was exactly how she liked it. The gymnasium doors at the far end banged open. Lena's eyes went there immediately, cataloging before her conscious brain caught up. Not threat. Just the 4th grade class arriving late, herded by a young teacher whose lanyard was tangled around her water bottle. Lena's pulse returned to its baseline without fanfare. "Can I have one?" A small voice. She looked down. A girl, maybe 6, gap-toothed, hair and uneven pigtails that suggested a dad had done them. She was pointing at the snickerdoodles with the grave seriousness of a person making a very important trade negotiation. "One," Lena said and put the smallest one on a napkin. The girl took it and studied it for a moment. "You're the lady in the front office," she said. "Yes." "You never smile," the girl said, not unkindly, just observationally. "I smile sometimes," Lena said. The girl looked unconvinced and walked away. Lena went back to arranging the cookies. She was aware, in the way she was always aware of things she wasn't supposed to be aware of in a place like this, that the gymnasium had shifted slightly around 4:15, not in any way most people would notice. A sound frequency that didn't match the ambient noise of a Tuesday bake sale, She turned her head perhaps 2 degrees to the right and used her peripheral vision the way she'd been trained, pulling in the full frame rather than focusing. 4 adults had come through the main doors, not parents. They weren't moving like parents. Parents move in that distracted, scattered orbit, checking phones, scanning for their kids, carrying diaper bags or Tupperware. These 4 moved with a directed, economical weight. They paused just inside the door. The one in front, a woman, late 30s, dark-skinned, close-cropped hair, let her eyes do a systematic sweep of the room, left to right, then back, checking the exits. Lena set down the plate of cookies. The woman had a slight tilt to her chin that Lena recognized in the way you recognize a word in a foreign language you spent 2 years trying to forget, automatically, involuntarily, deep in some linguistic instinct that bypasses intention entirely. Her left arm was carried at an odd angle, slightly contracted toward her body, the elbow not quite extending all the way. An old injury, healed wrong or healed as well as it could. Behind her, a tall man in a heavy wool jacket had the blank measuring look of someone perpetually calculating distance. Next to him, a younger man, late 20s, moved with a barely perceptible hitch in his right step. He'd learned to disguise it well. Lena clocked it in about 3 seconds. The 4th member of the group was a woman, smaller, hanging back slightly near the door, arms crossed. Her eyes weren't scanning the room. They were fixed on Lena. Lena felt a cold, specific pressure behind her sternum, not anxiety. Something older and more precise than anxiety. The particular hypervigilance of a body that learned a long time ago that being found was dangerous. She didn't run. Running caused panic, and besides, there was nowhere to run that a gymnasium full of 3rd graders wouldn't notice. She turned back to the cookies and picked up the plate with both hands, buying herself 4 seconds. Then she set it down, adjusted her polo collar, and turned to face the room. The woman with the close-cropped hair was moving through the gymnasium now, threading between folding tables and clusters of children with practiced patience, her eyes locked ahead. Behind her, the others followed in a loose formation that was not a formation and absolutely was a formation. They stopped 6 feet from the table. Trisha materialized at Lena's elbow out of nowhere, clutching her clipboard. "Can I help you? Are you parents of a Riverside student?" "We're looking for someone," the woman said. Her voice was controlled, deep. She glanced at Trisha briefly, dismissively, and then looked at Lena. Lena Kowalski. The juice boxes Lena had been restacking slid slightly in her grip. She steadied them without looking down. Trisha turned to Lena with a bright, quizzical expression. "Oh, do you know these people?" "I need a minute," Lena said to Trisha. Of course," Trisha said, then hovered uncertainly before someone at the other end of the table spilled a cup of lemonade and gave her something urgent to do. Lena looked at the woman across the table. She had a small scar at the outer corner of her left eyebrow. Lena knew exactly what had made it. She'd put 6 stitches in that eyebrow with a field suture kit in the back of a blacked-out vehicle on a dirt road outside a city she could no longer officially remember visiting. "Sergeant Adeze," Lena said quietly. Her own voice sounded strange to her, too controlled, like reciting. The woman, Adeze, pulled in a long, slow breath through her nose. The professional composure held, but barely. Something moved beneath the surface of her expression. "It's just Zara now," she said. "I've been out 2 years." The tall man in the wool jacket said nothing. He was watching the room, a reflex that had apparently not faded either. The man with the hitching step looked at Lena with an expression that was almost gentle. "You look different," he said. "Your hair." "I changed it," Lena said. "I'm Delacroix," he said, as if she might not remember. As if she had not spent 11 minutes with her hands inside his leg in a forward operating base with a generator-powered light and no adequate anesthesia. "I remember Delacroix," she said. He nodded, looked at the floor, then back at her. The small woman near the edge of the group, the one who hadn't moved like the others, who'd stayed back, was perhaps 26 now, though she'd been barely 21 the last time Lena saw her. She was carrying something. A canvas bag, warm, military-issue tan. She held it against her stomach with both arms the way a person holds something they're not sure they have the right to give. Zara looked from the bag to Lena. "We tried to find you 18 months ago," she said. "The address we had was your sister's place in Tucson. She said you'd moved." "I had moved," Lena said. "It took us a while." Zara's jaw tightened briefly. "We weren't going to stop." "You should have," Lena said, but there was no real heat in it. It came out tired rather than sharp. Around them, the bake sale continued its oblivious rotation. Children squealed. A balloon escaped someone's fist and scraped along the ceiling. Tricia was gesturing at someone about the lemonade situation. The gymnasium smelled like sugar and floor wax and the institutional cafeteria-grade coffee that someone had set up in a percolator near the bleachers. None of it was real right now. The real thing was this table and these 4 people and the weight of a canvas bag and the particular silence between people who've seen each other at their absolute worst and survived it and never talked about it and somehow, inexplicably, are now standing in an elementary school gymnasium in New Jersey. "Why are you here?" Lena asked. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. She kept her hands flat on the table. Zara reached into her jacket pocket. Lena's weight shifted slightly forward, reflex, automatic, and Zara caught it and paused and said, "It's not a weapon," very quietly, with something in her face that might have been sorrow. She pulled out a folded square of paper. It was a photograph, printed on regular printer paper, the kind that's not quite right for photos. Slightly grainy, the colors just slightly too saturated. She smoothed it flat on the table between them. It was a hospital, an American hospital somewhere clean and bright, and in the photo, a child, maybe 2 years old, sitting up in a hospital bed. Dark eyes, bald from treatment, tiny blue gown, smiling, holding a stuffed rabbit. Lena stared at the photograph. The gymnasium noise went very far away. "Marcus Reyes," Zara said. Then, catching herself, "I know that's a name you've been told to forget, but I need to say it. Marcus Reyes had a daughter. Isabella, she's 3 now." Lena closed her eyes. She could feel the weight of a grown man in full kit. The specific, terrible physics of dragging someone who can no longer help you move them. The hard frozen ground of a ridgeline she still saw in the dark sometimes. The particular blue-black of a sky with no light pollution anywhere. Stars punching through so bright and cold they looked sharp enough to cut. She remembered the sound Marcus Reyes made when she found him, and the sound he made 22 minutes later, and the silence after that. She remembered a photograph in his front chest pocket, bent and blood-soaked at the corner. A woman and a baby, barely born. She opened her eyes. The child in the photograph on the table in front of her was bald because of cancer. She understood that now, absorbing the full context of the image, the IV line, the wristband, the clinical surroundings. Not a healthy child, a sick one. "What is this?" she said, and the steadiness in her voice cost her something. "Isabella was diagnosed 14 months ago," Zara said. She kept her own voice even. The factual tone of someone who has rehearsed this, who knew that clinical delivery was the only way to get through it. Leukemia. She needed bone marrow. Zara paused. Her mother, Camila. She couldn't be a match. The family searched. They found a donor 8 months ago. She touched the edge of the photograph. She's in remission. Lena looked at the photo, at the smiling bald child with the stuffed rabbit. "Why are you telling me this?" she said, and her voice finally cracked on the last word, just slightly, like a hairline fracture in something that had been under sustained pressure for a very long time. "Because Camila asked us to find you," Zara said. She knew Marcus talked about his unit. She knew about the ridge. She knew he wasn't alone when Zara stopped. Reset. She wanted the people who were there to know that Isabella is alive, that Marcus's daughter is alive. She pushed the photograph slightly toward Lena, and she wanted you to know specifically. She said Marcus kept your name. Lena looked at the table, at the photograph, at the terrible, ordinary abundance of the bake sale surrounding them. The paper plates, the sugar cookies with orange frosting shaped like leaves because it was October, the hand-painted banner that said Fall Festival with 2 exclamation points in a child's enthusiastic marker strokes. She felt the specific, terrible thing that she had been carefully not feeling for 4 years begin to pressurize somewhere behind her ribs. I didn't get him off the ridge, Lena said. She said it to the table. You all know that. It took too long to get to him. By the time I got there, he had been. She stopped. The clinical words failed her. She pressed her lips together. I had his photo, she said, the one from his pocket. I kept it. I don't know why. I couldn't send it anywhere. Everything was classified. I kept it in a shoebox under my bed in Tucson for 2 years, and then I moved here and I kept it in a shoebox under my bed here. She looked up. What am I supposed to do with that? No one answered immediately. Delacroix's jaw was tight. The younger woman was looking at the floor. The quiet man in the wool jacket had turned his head away toward the gymnasium wall, his profile rigid. I don't know, Zara said finally. She wasn't offering comfort. She was answering the actual question with the actual answer. I don't know what any of us are supposed to do with any of it. A child bumped against the back of Lena's legs on the way to the cookie table. Lena stepped aside automatically, keeping the table between herself and the 4 of them, keeping her hands flat on the surface, an anchor. Marcus is gone, Zara said. That doesn't change. Camila knows that. She's not looking for closure. She's not asking you to do anything. She just wanted you to know about Isabella. Because she said her husband talked about his medic. Zara met her eyes. He talked about you. Lena breathed, in through the nose, out slow. The way the VA counselor had taught her, the one she'd gone to exactly twice before deciding she didn't have the vocabulary for what needed to be said in those beige rooms. He called me Ski, she said, and the memory of it came out of nowhere. Marcus Reyes laughing at something the way he called her Ski instead of Kowalski because, he said, her last name had too many consonants for a Tuesday. She hadn't thought about that laugh in years. She had been actively not thinking about that laugh for years. It came up now unpermitted and lodged somewhere in her throat. The young woman with the canvas bag stepped forward for the first time. She was quiet and serious-faced, and when she set the bag on the table, Lena could see that her left hand had limited grip, the fingers permanently stiff in a partial curl, scarring visible at the wrist. A burn. Old. Camila sent this, the young woman said. Her voice was soft. She said she doesn't expect anything from you. She just wanted you to have it. Lena looked at the bag. She didn't touch it. Vasquez, Zara said quietly, and the young woman stepped back. Open it when we're gone if you want, Zara said. Or don't. That's... She exhaled. We're not here to make it harder than it already is. You came 4 of you, Lena said. You couldn't have called. We didn't have your number. Zara paused. And I didn't think you'd answer. Lena looked at her, at the scar at the corner of her eyebrow, at the arm that didn't fully extend, at this woman who had been 25 years old on that ridgeline and was now, whatever she was, a civilian, a person who went to grocery stores and had a last name she used again, standing in an elementary school gymnasium in New Jersey because Marcus Reyes's widow had asked her to find his medic. Are you okay? Lena asked. The question surprised Zara visibly. She blinked. The professional composure shifted into something more unguarded. Some days, she said. The arm. Some days, Zara said again. Lena nodded. They stood in the particular silence of people who understand that some days is the only honest answer available. Delacroix cleared his throat. We're not staying, he said. We wanted you to know. We wanted you to have it from us, not a letter, not some. He gestured vaguely. We owed you that much. You don't owe me anything, Lena said. We know, the quiet man in the wool jacket said. He had a low voice. He'd barely spoken. We came anyway. A beat of silence. Then Zara looked around the gymnasium, at the children and the paper plates and the banner with its cheerful exclamation points, and something in her expression softened in a way that was almost painful to see, like a person who forgot for 1 second that the world could still have things like fall festivals in it. This is a good place, she said quietly. And then, to Lena, you look like you belong here. Lena said nothing. Zara gave a single brief nod. The tactical formation they weren't acknowledging dissolved. They turned. Delacroix glanced back once, the hitching step more pronounced now that he wasn't concentrating, the way a limp always worsens when a person stops performing. The young woman, Vasquez, touched the strap of the canvas bag on the table once before she turned away, like a small goodbye to the object she'd carried here. They walked out through the gymnasium doors. The door swung shut. The hydraulic hinge gave its slow, deliberate close. Lena stood at the table for a moment. The bake sale resumed its full volume around her. Tricia reappeared at her elbow with the fresh case of juice boxes. Do you know those people from before you worked here? She asked, not pryingly, just conversationally, the way Tricia did everything. Yes, Lena said, a long time ago. Oh, how nice that they found you, Tricia said, handing her a box of apple juice to stack. Lena took the box. Yes, she said. She worked the rest of the event. She replenished the cookies. She handled the cash box when the parent volunteer needed a bathroom break. She helps Tricia break down the folding tables at 5:30. She smiled twice. Once at a kindergartner who told her she had pretty hair, which was objectively untrue, but delivered with total sincerity, and once at nothing in particular, briefly, when no one was watching. She carried the canvas bag to her car without opening it. She sat in the driver's seat in the parking lot of Riverside Elementary while the other cars backed out around her and the sodium lights flickered on in the early October dark. She held the canvas bag in her lap with both hands. Through the cloth she could feel the outline of something flat and rectangular. A frame, she thought. A picture frame. She opened the bag. It was a photograph. A real one this time, printed properly, protected in a simple dark wood frame. A little girl in a park, fully healthy, fully haired now in wild dark curls, running toward the camera with both arms extended. She was wearing a yellow rain jacket and rubber boots with frogs on them. Her face was open and ecstatic in the way only very small children can be. Completely unguarded. Completely in the moment. Entirely unbothered by the concept that moments end. Underneath the photo was a folded note. 1 page. Handwritten. Lena did not read it in the parking lot. She folded it back, set the frame carefully on the passenger seat with the image facing up, and started the car. She drove home on roads she could navigate without thinking. She parked in front of her building and sat for a moment with the engine idling, looking at Isabella Reyes in her frog boots, arms out, running at full tilt toward someone who loved her. Lena turned the engine off. She had nightmares scheduled for her, waiting in the apartment like reliable bad house guests. She had a shoebox under her bed with a bent, blood-edged photograph inside it. She had 4 years of careful invisibility behind her and no particular plan for what came next. She picked up the frame. She got out of the car. In her apartment, she stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then she went to the bookshelf in the living room, mostly unread paperbacks and a half-dead succulent, and moved the succulent to the windowsill and set the frame on the shelf where it caught the light. A little girl in frog boots running full speed toward whatever came next. Lena made coffee she didn't particularly want and stood in the kitchen drinking it, looking through the doorway at the photograph. She thought about Marcus Reyes saying her last name had too many consonants for a Tuesday. She thought about Zara's arm and Delacroce's leg, and the young woman's curled fingers, and the man in the wool jacket who'd said we came anyway like it was a simple thing, an obvious thing, the only thing that made sense. She thought about 3 years old and remission, and frog boots and arms stretched wide reaching. The coffee went cold. She poured it out and stood at the sink for a while. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a car passed on the street below, and then another, and the ordinary nighttime sounds of a small New Jersey town assembled themselves around her. The distant bark of a neighbor's dog, the mechanical click of the heating system starting up, the particular quality of silence that belongs specifically to places that have never been anything but safe. She had spent 4 years teaching herself not to listen for threats in that silence. Tonight she let herself just hear the quiet, and for a few minutes, the quiet was enough. I keep thinking about Lena standing behind that folding table, arranging snickerdoodles with the same precision she once used to lay out surgical instruments. Nobody in that gymnasium knew. Nobody needed to know. That was the whole point she'd built her life around. Be useful, be invisible, ask nothing of anyone, carry it alone. And for a long time, I think I understood that instinct. There's something that feels like strength in that kind of silence. If you never let anyone see the weight, you never have to explain it. You never have to watch someone's face change when they realize what you've actually been through. But Zara and Delacroce and Vasquez drove to New Jersey and walked into an elementary school bake sale because someone asked them to, not because it was easy. Not because they had the right words. They came because Marcus Reyes's daughter was alive and his medic deserved to know that. They came because doing right by someone doesn't expire. It doesn't have a statute of limitations. The cause, Lena running toward a ridgeline when everyone else was ordered back, staying with a man who was already gone so he wouldn't die alone in the dark, produced an effect that traveled 4 years forward in time and landed in a canvas bag on a folding table in New Jersey. That's just how it works. What we do in the hardest moments doesn't disappear. It moves through time. It reaches people we'll never meet. What I find myself sitting with is this. Lena had every skill, every instinct, every piece of knowledge needed to survive the worst situations imaginable. She was sharp and capable, and trained to a degree most people will never understand, but intelligence alone, capability alone, didn't keep her from spending 4 years in a spare bedroom staring at a ceiling fan, then 4 more years being invisible in a school hallway. Knowing how to do something and knowing how to live with what you've done are completely different things. The second one takes something harder to build. It takes the willingness to let what happened to you mean something, to let Isabella in frog boots running full speed toward a camera mean something, instead of keeping it locked in a shoebox under the bed. And the people who came to find her. Zara with her arm that doesn't extend all the way. Delacroce and his leg. Vasquez and her burned hand. They had every reason to stay home, stay quiet, stay in the careful life they'd each built around their own damage. They came anyway. That's the thing I keep returning to. We came anyway, the quiet man in the wool jacket said, like it was obvious. Like there was never really a question. That kind of steadiness, the kind that shows up even when it costs something, is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It just walks through the door. Lena didn't fix anything that night. She still had nightmares waiting for her. She still had a shoebox under her bed. But she put a photograph on her bookshelf. She let a little girl in rain boots occupy the space where there used to be nothing but a dead plant and empty air. She drove home to ordinary streets and let the quiet of her apartment be just that. Quiet, not absence. That's the whole thing, I think. Not the grand gesture. Not the dramatic transformation. Just the willingness to put something on the shelf. To let one small true thing take up space.